Well, I'm just going to go ahead and get a little started because I don't know if anybody will go watch this from the beginning. I don't want to make it too long because not everybody's attention spans are very long, and only things that are interesting. And if you keep the flow going, it'll be a good live stream. So I'm going to try to keep it going with a little history. To my foreign friends, you're not going to understand this too much. You may a little bit. Yellow is a legendary trucking company. At one time, they were the largest trucking company in the United States. When the old trucking company Pi, P.I.E. We just called them Pi, was around for many, many, many years, and it was the biggest truck company ever. And when they folded, I believe it was in the late '60s. I wasn't around then. I just heard the stories. When that happened, Yellow became the ruler of the roost when it came to Holland freight in the United States. At that time, when I was young enough, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing a yellow truck, a roadway truck. You know, basically, you were on an interstate, you're bound to bump into a yellow roadway truck. Now, when I was a kid, those were two separate companies. Uh, there was a merger between the two, but Yellow basically took over roadway, is what it is, and they became YRC. And up until like a couple of years ago, I guess they dropped the YRC name and strictly went back to Yellow. And this is going to be a part of trucking lore history. Um, Today, the 28th, was the last day. The company's already dead set on it. They made an extension on the contract a few days ago because it's been expired. But the company made it tried to negotiate directly with the drivers and the workers. And you really don't do that. That's in poor taste. That's what the union is there for, their union representation. And that didn't work. And they should have known that that wasn't going to work. And I kind of, in a way, would have been pissed off if I was the vice president or that executive that they sent there as a guinea pig, because that's like, feeding the lamb to the lions. And they tried to meet with the employees. They gave it a shot, and I expected them to cuss like truck drivers, like normally do. And some of them may be undereducated, but they're not stupid people. And they raised some good points, and they're not going to answer a half-educated economic question, because if they start answering those questions, then it'll lead to another one, and where they get the explanation and fully understand what the hell's going on. That they don't care about the employees is what they can get away with. If they can't get away with paying the workers next to nothing in wages, then they're going to do what the company's going to do. The boards of directors and the investors decided, look, we'll just go ahead and declare bankruptcy and sell everything off piecemeal. And that's basically what they're going to do. The office staff, the non-drivers, the office staff works in the offices, they all got letters today that, you may be kept around for an extra few days, but within the next week, the company is going to be no more. A lot of terminals got shut down today, after today, and it's pretty sad. We're going to have a lot of people get put out of work because of corporate greed. That's all this is. And to let everybody know, in the title, it's Yellow Holland and the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Yellow's the company I'm addressing because they own Holland. They acquired Holland, I believe, like 4 or 5 years ago. I could be wrong, but they acquired Holland too. Um, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters is the name of the union that this truck company's bought. Now it's to the point where I only know of two. After if Yellow was gone, there's only two unionized trucking companies that I know of in America, and a lot of your trucking companies when I was a kid were union. They were all Teamsters. The only one that I know of now would be UPS and ABF. And my dad ended his trucking career with ABF. I think he had just shy under 20 years with ABF before he was forced to retire. But this is what I told in discussion at the truck show with a lot of drivers. A lot of us are independent, um, lease or owner operators. Some were company, but they're still more of an independent. None of us were union. I'm not against the union. If you're against the union, then you're against your the working class interests. Um, I told everybody 5 years ago. It was the last truck show I was at. It was in Louisville, Kentucky. I told everybody then half the companies that you see today are going to be gone in 10 years. Well, that was 5 years ago. And we're talking two big trucking companies are disappearing in the past 3 years. And that Yellow Freight is now gone. And a couple of years, I believe it was about 2 or 3 years ago, a big trucking company based out of Indianapolis, Indiana called Celadon. It looked like a great outfit. Well, they went under too. And it goes along with that's what our economic system produces. Now, the workers, when I was watching some of these, I'm glad some of the drivers recorded it on their phone and posted it on their YouTube, and it was great. And you could actually see what it's like in a labor dispute, that things can get ugly. And the driver, one of them, I couldn't tell who it was, brought it up. That was a good idea. He's like, all these corporations during the pandemic got PPP loans, and now they're all forgiven, most of them, but they all got these bailouts and PPP loans, and YRC got $700 million back in 2019, which is about 4 years ago. $700 million. Okay, I look at YRT's equipment. For the most part, their tractors, they're okay. But you look at their trailers, it's like they're in bad shape. You don't ever, I would never drive a truck with a rusted rim on it because you're begging for trouble. Because that happened to USA Freight in Grand Rapids, Michigan about 15 years ago. It was a rusted rim. It finally snapped. The tire flew off and hit a car and killed a woman. I believe her baby girl survived. It was in a car seat. But it struck the car and killed the woman driving. I would never, and you look at a lot of Yellow's trailers and a lot of their tires, you look at the rims, are all rusted out. I would never drive a truck with a rusted rim. That's why I like the company that I pull for. I'm an owner operator. I got the title to my truck. I haven't made a truck payment in a year and 8 months. And we only run chrome rims, chromed out rims. I've never seen one of our trailers with a rusted rim on it. Never. Plus, the company I pull for, They only keep a trailer for at most 5 years, and they get rid of it, or they scrap it for parts. But we keep fairly new equipment. Anyway, I may not be a Teamster, but I am OOIDA. They also call it OIDA. That's the Owner Operators Independent Drivers Association. It's like a union for owner operators. My dad was never a part of OIDA. I am. But I've yet to become a Teamster. That could still happen. I'm in debate. I got a whole nother year and 5 months to decide, am I going to stay pulling loads for the Prime Inc., or am I going to go somewhere else? Am I going to take my truck somewhere else, or am I going to park my truck and pull from some outfit? Now, ABF has always been calling my name because I'm sort of a legacy there, because that's where my dad was. And there's only a few left that are still driving there. They're on the verge of retirement anyway, that would remember my father. Now, some of the office staff, they all remember my father. And that's why I scare some of them when they see me, because they look at me like they've seen a ghost. Because especially Susie, she looks right at me. She goes, "You look just like your dad." You know, I visit them because a lot of Fridays during the summer, we would always have a fish fry at the Union Hall, and that's where I got to know all these people. And they didn't ever think that I was ever going to be a trucker, because me and my brother, we all went to college. My father did not want us to drive a truck for a living. Well, if my father was alive today, he would look at the economy and the job market and say, well, it's about the only thing that pays. You might as well just go ahead and go for it. But enough about me. This is about the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Now I'm starting to sound like Jimmy Hoffa. Well, so what? Jimmy Hoffa may have been, corrupt and had mob ties, but I'll tell you what that bastard did do. He gave the truckers a good life. He negotiated a lot of truckers to have a upper middle class life. My father was one of those. Because here's the way things used to be. And I don't have amnesia. I remember it like yesterday. My dad was driving for Murphy Motor Freight. It was a family outfit out of St. Paul, Minnesota. And they had terminals throughout a good portion of the United States. They weren't that big, but they were big enough. They were popular because they ran those half cab max, no sleeper, and a 48. They just introduced the 53-foot trailers. But I remember it well. They were Teamsters also. That was a union outfit. Okay, my mom was a cop, but she took time off of work until I went to kindergarten, which was about 5 years after my birth. She would go in maybe a day here and a day there just to maintain the employment until I was old enough to go to kindergarten full day, and my mom can go back to full-time work. So most of the time, my dad would go to work. He'd be gone all week. He'd be home on the weekends, Friday and Saturday. And he'd be gone Monday through Friday. He'd come home about Friday night. We'd wake up in the morning on Saturday to watch Saturday morning cartoons with a bowl of cereal. And Dad would wake up. He'd come out in his box of shorts and T-shirt and socks, and give him a hug, and we'd watch cartoons together. Well, this is the way things used to be economically. All the bills were always paid. Had plenty to eat in the kitchen. Cupboards were always full. We had two snowmobiles. We had a 1978 and 79 green Thunderbird. We had two of them. We had a 1977 Explorer F-150 pickup truck. And it was all paid for. Okay? And that was on my father's income alone. He was a Teamster truck driver. Yeah. Yeah, the drivers were making good money back then. I mean, we make all right money now, but not as good as when my dad made. Even though inflation was different and the amount of money isn't as much, but your money went a whole hell of a lot further back then than it does now. In order to go back to that style of um, we would have to go back making what I make now. You would have to go back to the prices the way things were in the late '80s for me. That's the kind of money that I should be making, but it's not because the average wage, what your average worker made, what the money they made, and what they could spend it on, is the same as it was in 1978. What the money you make, what the money can buy you, is about the same as it was in 1978. Wages have not risen since. Yes, you may have gotten a raise here, raise there, but inflation had ate it away. See, that's a little something that they don't tell you. Because when I was in the UFCW local union, 1099, that ended up becoming local 75, I kept saying, no, this is not enough money. I said, inflation's going to eat this up. And they looked like they wanted to kill me because they don't want the regular employees to know that. That's why knowledge is power. And I'm like, you guys are representing us in the union. So you sort of work for us. If the Frank and file for the majority do not want this contract, we're going to vote it down and vote no. I know I sure as hell ain't going to work for that, which we ended up doing anyway. And I'll never forget that. It was the last contract. It was in 1998. That one contract that I was heavily involved in. And I told him, I said, inflation's going to eat this away. I said, and plus the gas prices are going to go through the roof. I saw it coming long before it happened. And I went back to him later. We call him Lenny and Squiggy. Lenny and Steve. They were part of the union. Lenny, I kind of get along with. Steve, I looked right him in the eye and told him that. And then when it happened, I went right back down and I said, you remember what I told you during that meeting? I said, look at the gas prices now. And that was when the first time they ever hit like $4. This is when George W. Bush was president. Check that shit out. Okay, douchebag. Knowing there was only one lane back there and I got to get over and they want to pass me on the right. I'm giving you up the hammer lane, dipshit. Well, this is just par for a course and it's a prelude to things to come. This is history repeating itself. This is what happens when a bunch of Americans believed in the American dream story that we would live better than our parents. That shit had been dead long ago. That died back in the early to mid 80s. The story where, it was your birthright. You're going to live better. You go to school, you go to college, and you study, and you do the right thing. You're going to live better than your parents. That shit died long ago. Because, yes, that for 150 years in our country, wages rose. But thanks to the invention of the jet engine, modern telecommunications, the corporations were like, why the hell are we in a place where we can pay high wages when we could stay here but move the corporation to another country and still with modern telecommunications or get on a plane and fly around the world in a matter of hours. Why the hell are we where wages are so high when we can go produce over there and just bring the shit back in the country? I've been saying this a long time. A lot of people have. Nobody wanted to see it. Nobody wanted to hear it. Like right now, a lot of people don't want to hear it. A lot of people don't want to see my video. Well, you're going to get the truth. I'm not going to bullshit you because I'm in the same boat as everybody else. And if everybody thinks, oh, I'm safe, you're safe for now. This is a game of musical chairs. When the music stops, somebody's going to be left to hang out to dry. Well, 200,000 workers at YRC are now left out to dry. Now, your upper executives got a severance, and they could probably easily find an exec job at another trucking company somewhere, depending on who they want to blame for this fiasco of mismanagement of funds. Like one driver said in that video, he goes, I would like you to explain this to me. How did you guys piss away $700 million? That was a good question. $700 million? That's a lot of freaking money, people. Matter of fact, the Powerball lottery's at $901 million. That's a lot of money. But this ought to tell you people which direction our economy is going. It's not better. It's not going to get better. But the media and everything else is going to bullshit you until the major crash happens. And believe me, a lot of economists were waiting for it. Every 4 to 7 years, like clockwork, there's an economic downturn. And this next one, it's going to sting really bad. When the next crash happens, I'm expecting probably another Great Depression. And I hope you all expect it too. You just better hope you're prepared for it. Because a lot of people that I told about this long ago thought that they were safe. Now they're not. They used to talk bad about people losing their job. Oh, go get another job or do this and do that. Now they're out there crying with their hat in their hand. I said, I'm not going to tell you what you said about all those other people years ago. But I'm sorry this had to happen to you. I mean, shoot, this could happen to me. Prime can cancel my contract and I'm out of a job. I can easily go somewhere else, yes. But it's not going to get better. Don't look for it. It ain't going to happen. That's why I kept telling people in some of the videos I made 2 years ago about the economy. A lot of the colleagues, and especially my professor, my former college professor, he'd been warning about this for over 20 years. People don't want to hear it. Well, you're going to have to hear it because I believed in it too. I believed in that same American dream story that is now dead. Like what Carlin said about 25 years ago, you got to be asleep to believe it. It's true. Even then, the American dream was dead. It may have happened here and there, but you don't see a mass amounts of working class people becoming capitalists, do you? No, you don't. You don't see a lot of that going around you. We got a lot of Americans that always thought that was our birthright. We were going to live better than our parents. We were going to live the high life and everything else. And that's why a lot of Americans go to other countries and they hate us because they acted so fucking arrogant. Because I got family members that are like that. They act like shame millionaires, and yet they never were millionaires, nor will they ever become millionaires unless they are lucky enough to win that Powerball lottery. I don't know if anybody won it tonight, if there was a drawing or whatnot, but I'm thinking about buying a ticket. Nobody won it. I'm going to buy a ticket this time. But you got a lot of Americans running around acting like shamed millionaires, which they never were, and nor will they ever will be millionaires. But they were given that thought in their head by indoctrination in their whole life, being told this shit. Hey, look, it's time to wake up from it. It's time to get away from the American dream and get and live with reality. And those boomers, because my oldest sister is a boomer. She's one of the later boomers. They all thought the same thing. And now that they're getting screwed out of their retirement, and I do, sort of feel sorry for them. I said, I tried telling you. Now they're scapegoating again. Some of these undereducated yellow drivers, they're going to scapegoat, find somebody to blame. And the famous one, immigrants. Basically, the Mexicans. Scapegoating doesn't do anything and doesn't do anybody any good. Plus, it's a lie. Okay, now we got yellow and Holland out, and whatever freight they had just got freed up. And the only people that I see going to benefit from that would be Old Dominion, ABF, and maybe XPO. Maybe. But your beneficiaries I see would be Old Dominion. Old Dominion, I believe, is non-union. But it's a good trucking outfit. They got a big terminal there in Pennsylvania, right off the pike there. I believe it's off the pike. But Old Dominion is a good trucking company. They got good equipment. Better than Yellow, I'll tell you that. But I believe that the freight that whatever contracts Yellow had is going to go be dispersed. And the companies they're going to turn to would be ABF and Old Dominion. Just all depends, on their sales department. Because if I was working for ABF or Old Dominion and I was in sales, I'd be contacting their customers. They're like, hey, we got you guys covered. What freight do you have? If they're going bankrupt, they're not going to be hauling any freight. We got you covered. And because you guys maybe got a lot of freight that is late, we'll give you a good discount on hauling that freight for you for the first month. And then you sign a contract with us at regular rates. We'll make it worth your while. Because believe me, that's how you do business. If you want to stay in business. But with YRC, that they had no excuse. They had a $700 million bailout 4 years ago. And that's ridiculous. That's what you call very poorly managed. And those executives that just lost their job, The secretaries, I'd hire them, but I'm talking about like the boards of directors, the ones that were in charge, like the CEO or the president, vice president of those companies. I'd be like, don't even come here. I said, I'll hand you the application because by law I have to, but it's going to go right in the trash can once you hand it back to us. I would take any of those guys with a 10-foot pole that you ran Yellow into the ground. It was mismanagement that did that. The only people you can blame with what's happening to Yellow Road, Yellow and Holland Freight is, I believe there's like maybe what 10 to 15 members of the boards of directors and the CEO and the president and vice president. Those people are the ones that made the decisions to do all this shit, not anybody else. The union was there to negotiate. They weren't. Oh, this must be part of the new highway here. I knew it looked a little bit different. I'm sorry about that, but anybody else here that does business and has done business, if you got a $700 million bailout from the taxpayers' money, and 4 years later you're going under and having to declare bankruptcy and tell your drivers that took pay cuts years ago and had promises to get it back and never did, well, they should have known that that was bullshit. Oh, and this company here, I don't know if they're union or not. The doubles that just passed me, that's Estes. They're a big outfit also. They may benefit from wire yellow going out too. But that is heavily mismanaged. Look, I know some flunkies. Okay, they barely graduated from an economics course in college. I know those dipshits could have done a better job at managing that company than the boneheads that they had running it right now. And they wouldn't want someone like me to run it because I'd make sure that the drivers were getting a pay raise to go along with the inflation. Yeah, they're the ones that are making the income. They're the ones that are moving the freight. You take care of your employees. You're still in business, and you just hope to hell that some other companies go under and you get their contracts and you can expand. But YRC or Yellow got too big for their britches, and they built the house too big for what they had, and yeah, it was bad, poorly mismanaged. I feel sorry for the drivers that lost their jobs, especially the ones that had anywhere between 30 to 40 to almost 50 years with that company. Had many years of dedication to that company, and then now told, don't come into work, and the doors are chained up. Well, if you're only 6% of the working force in the United States is represented by a labor union, okay? When you used to hear the words big labor and everything, and like you're living on a different planet. Big labor has been dead since the mid 80s. When Reagan deregulated the airlines and told them to go back to work or they're out of a job, he busted up the unions and stuff. Yeah, that killed big labor. And that should have told the majority of the voters that you just voted against your interest to somebody to slit your throat that you thought that loved you. And Ronald Reagan was a part of the Screen Actors Guild and was a steward of the Screen Actors Guild union. And he should have known better. Once you've been part of a union, you still, even though you may not be a part of it officially, you still don't turn your back on the union. That's like turning your back on the working class, which you're in. Well, he got a lot of money, just like everybody else in government. Got big checks given to him by Morgan Stanley, and Merrill Lynch, the auto industry, and then he got him elected, and then he handed out big tax breaks to him to shut down Flint, Michigan, and send all those, which they didn't have to. The three major auto companies in the United States were still making major profits. Well, the only reason why they did that because their labor contract was up. They didn't want to negotiate. Reagan gives them a big tax break, which they turn around and take that tax break money, which is, the American people's money, so they can build a warehouse and move over to Hyderabad or Sao Paulo, Brazil, or most likely China. Yeah, that's what they did with the tax break they got from Ronald Reagan. Closed down the factories overnight there. They packed up in the middle of the night like the Baltimore Colts and moved here to Indianapolis, which I just passed their stadium, which is Lucas Oil, which is kind of ironic. Yeah, overnight. Flint, Michigan, Detroit. I like when you hear the bullshit stories about why Detroit's the way it is. They want to blame it on socialism, and I'm like, socialism had nothing to do with what happened to Detroit. No, that's capitalism at its finest. 40 people in the boards of directors of the three major auto companies, Ford, GM, Chrysler. That's who they were. 40 people on the boards of directors decided what happened to Detroit. 40 people. And at that time, at its height, there were just shy of 3 million people that lived in the Detroit area. 3 million. You look at it today, just a little over 400,000 live in Detroit. That's what happens when major companies that employ the majority of the city decide to pack up and leave. See, they got the profit without having to pay the cost. No, the cost is left up for us to pay for. Now, some of them that got smart by moving out of Detroit because they knew which way the wind was going to blow, and a good portion of those were steel workers. And they said, well, let's go to Baltimore or a few of the cities in Pennsylvania, especially Baltimore. Baltimore is the same shape as Detroit. Well, when a lot of those workers that worked for the auto industry that went to Baltimore would suffer the same syndrome a couple years later when the Bethlehem Steel Company, which was the biggest in the United States, decided to pack up and move overseas. Well, the thing about trucking is, without us, this country is going to collapse. There's going to be rioting in the streets. People are not going to be able to get food, clothing, medicine, whatever it is that you need. It's not going to make it to the stores. And once the stores run out, that's it. That's why I'm glad I have the job I do. As long as there's an opening somewhere, which there always is. But we're always going to need that freight moved. Even though YRC went under, that freight's still going to have to be moved by somebody. But not only is this a story of Yellow and Holland and International Brotherhood of Teamsters, this is about the American worker. This is about how the American worker is thrown under the bus for the rich corporate elite. They get the bailouts, they get the tax breaks, which is what we call the 1%, which is about 2,800 people, a little bit more than that and change. That makes up the 1%. The rest of us get screwed. But like I've shared with other people, 1789, the French aristocracy didn't see it coming either. But the problem is, like George Carlin said, a lot of Americans are too fat and happy. They figure, well, we'll let them do it, or you guys will do it. No, no, no. This is going to have to take a grassroots movement. This is going to have to take everybody to get off their ass, put the fucking phone down, get off the computer, unless you're communicating amongst each other to organize this shit. Because if the news would show us properly of what's going on over in Europe, what's been going on in Germany, France, parts of Spain, and Britain, the yellow vest movement, that shit's still going on, especially in France. But back about the auto industry. What the auto industry just discovered here as of recent, that they killed the goose that laid its golden eggs. Yeah, it was nice and great, quaint in the 80s and 90s. But it didn't take long for other corporations to figure the shit out what they were doing. So they wanted to go too. So they pack up and leave and produce over in another country and just ship it back here to the United States. Well, when you put all the American workers out of work like that, you're not going to have anybody to buy what you're trying to sell. And a lot of people didn't figure this out. Yeah, it's good for the ones who just started doing that first, which was the auto industry. But when all the others started doing it, and that's why Walmart saw the wind blowing that way, and that's why they went ahead and they wouldn't buy American-made products anymore because they cost too much. They couldn't sell them cheap enough in Walmart. Now, damn near everybody shops at Walmart. Shoot, back in the day when I was younger, when Sam Walton was still alive, they'd only sell American-made products. But when he died, that changed overnight. But however, I don't know if my foreign friends wouldn't know this, but brands mean everything. And those fancy brands that everybody talks about, like Tommy Hilfiger, Gap, Old Navy still exist. You name it. A lot of those top brands that when you were in high school, that's the kind of clothing you had to wear or you weren't in the club. And believe me, they knew it if your parents shopped for your school clothes at Walmart. Well, not everybody could have afforded the more expensive brands. Me, I didn't give a shit. I'd tell everybody, I don't know what you're talking about. As long as I got clean clothes on my ass, I can care less what is on the label. And I didn't. I really, to this day, I still don't care. And I just recently, about a year ago, learned what Louis Vuitton was. Yeah, Louis Vuitton. You're spending, $5,000 for a handbag just because the name that is on it, which it probably only costs $10 to make in a sweatshop in another country. But you're going to give that person $4,000 to $5,000 for that bag. I'm like, screw that. I can go to Walmart and buy a $5 wallet, and it'd last 10, 15 years before it fell apart. And it's like, well, who are you trying to impress? Me, I can give shit less than impress anybody. But when you're beat on by advertisement and about, you got to have this, you got to have that, and this old story in America called Keeping Up with the Joneses, it gets people to that point because some people are too weak-minded to figure it out. And hey, I had my fan favorites of certain sports, but these shoes that Michael Jordan makes, through Nike. I'm like, I don't give a flying leap who's on the damn shoe or whose name is what. I tell you what, take the name off. I just want to buy a pair of freaking shoes that fit. I can care less whose name is on it. I few of my people I've worked with when I worked in for the Kroger company years ago. This kid always had to have the new pair of Air Jordans that came out. And it would take up damn near his entire paycheck to buy a pair of these shoes. And I'm like, man, dude, I am not spending that kind of money on a pair of shoes just because there's a silhouette of a man with a basketball in his hand. I'm like, screw that. I can care less what the hell the name is on it. Just give me the damn shoe. Those Air Jordan shoes are constructed no differently than your cheapest pair of shoes. You are just paying money, overpaying money, because of a guy who is endorsing a shoe with his name on it. And it's not like he isn't making enough money as it is. Michael Jordan, once he won Rookie of the Year for my Chicago Bulls and won that first championship trophy, he didn't have to worry about money the rest of his life. But he made more money through the Nike shoe contract than he ever did with the NBA. But look, it's going to be felt everywhere. Yeah, it was only this many workers, but you got to figure out how many other companies are going under. Not necessarily just in the trucking industry. You know, there's a lot of companies that have been going out of business. Some of the companies downsizing. A lot of your hamburger joints have been downsizing. Chick-fil-A was one of them. Burger King, McDonald's. They were getting rid of the locations that were less profitable. You drive around long enough, like I do in this country, you don't necessarily see it next to the highway, but when you get away from the highway a little bit and you get in town, you start to see boarded up hamburger places, hamburger joints, like Burger King. I used to like going for lunch. I'd go to the Burger King there in Springfield, Missouri. I'd get a double Whopper with just a sandwich. I don't ever get the fries or the drink. I'll take a double Whopper with cheese, no ketchup, no mayo, and no tomato. Because to me, that's gross. And it was good too, man. The flame broke, but no, can't go in there anymore. It's all boarded up now. You ended up boarded up buildings. You know, the United States is becoming Detroit squared. Everybody should have learned long ago when Detroit started looking like bombed out buildings in Beirut and everywhere else. That was a prelude to things to come. How many cities do I have to name out to you for y'all to get it? Not too far. Toledo, Ohio. Youngstown, Ohio. When the remainder of the auto industry pulled out of Youngstown. That was while Donald Trump was president, and he was trying to talk to them to staying. But that's not Donald Trump's fault. If a company decides to pack up and leave, there's nothing the president can do about it. Cleveland, Ohio, right next to Youngstown. But if you're an American, you really want to get an education about the way the economy's been going, make it a point to go visit Camden, New Jersey. I'll guarantee you won't go back, but you'll get a quick education there. Let's put it this way. Camden, New Jersey, you couldn't go in any third world country and find a sorry ass city like that one. You couldn't do it. You could not go to any third world country and find a city more sorry ass than Camden, New Jersey. I'm dead serious. Let's put it this way: the squatters area next to Manila looks a lot better than Camden, New Jersey. As a matter of fact, I was just in New Jersey a couple of days ago. Oh, no, it wasn't a couple of days ago. Because I was in Princeton for 3 days. Then about 5 days ago. Last week, I was in New Jersey moving some freight. And yeah, I went right by Camden, New Jersey. You look right at it. Even Detroit looks better than Camden. But you got Baltimore, pretty bad shape. And their most recent one, Nashville, Tennessee. Right around, they'll probably move them out when they start construction, tearing down that TA there by downtown Nashville. When they bulldoze that, they'll probably run all them people off. But they'll be back because they're tearing down the truck stop and building a parking garage for the Nissan Stadium where the Tysons play football. But those same people that were talking trash about, California, Oregon, and Washington, all those tent cities and everything, yeah. Usually when you see something out west that becomes a trend, it spreads throughout the entire United States. It just took a little while. But now you're going to see tent cities popping up everywhere. Because I was shocked when I tried to park at the TA there a few months ago. And I saw all the tents and all the homeless around the truck stop. And I think it was like 2 months before that, I pulled in to get fuel, and they didn't exist. But I wish people would come in here or take the time to listen to my videos and get an education. And look, what you were raised to believe and accept without question here in the United States, which was easy to do, you need to reevaluate. I know it's tough because I had to go through it too. And I had to realize I was lied to. And not necessarily lied to, but told about things by people that they didn't even know. They were just repeating what they were being told. It comes to a point where the history of our country, you got to go back and see what happened and why it happened. And that's why I keep telling people, you're going to have to realize that mama and daddy wasn't always right when it comes to something like this. And it's not necessarily their fault because they didn't even know. Because, hell, if my dad was still alive, I think he'd be in his late 80s, early 90s. Because my mom is in her late 70s. They're pre-baby boomers. They didn't make it. But they didn't grow up during the Great Depression. Their parents did. And some of their cousins did, but they were young too. My mom was born March 11th of 45, which was, I believe, a few weeks before the last assassination attempts on Hitler, before they ended, I believe they, oh, wait a minute. No, I believe it was a month later after my mom was born. That was when Germany surrendered. So that gives you a little history about my mom. But see, my parents were not boomers. However, they grew up hearing about all this, but weren't being told everything that their parents, my grandparents, should have told them to pass down to me. But one of my grandfathers did. My dad's dad, who fought in the 82nd Airborne and was in Berlin. Where he made friends with those Russians. Some of them did speak English. They cracked open a bottle of vodka and they drank it. And that's why during the Cold War, my granddad sat me on his knee and told me, don't believe everything that you're being told in your life. That's what started it for me. Because all during the Cold War, my granddad would always say, bullshit. Those Russians, had they not attacked Germany from the east and put pressure like they did, the United States would have got butchered on that Normandy beach. We wouldn't have. He said none of us would have made it off that beach alive had Russia not attacked from the east and put pressure on what they did. Let alone 27 million Russians died in the war, but that escapes a lot of Westerners' minds. The Russians suffered more casualties than any other country did. Let's put it this way. You're going to learn a lot from me. And no, I'm not going to bullshit you. Some of this you can look it up for yourself. But I just hope, because if we don't, we're going to end up destroying each other. That's what humanity's good at. Getting to the brink and averting it, but sometimes we just don't. We destroy each other. And if we do not get out of this monetized economic system, we're going to end up eventually destroying each other. Or we're going to end up destroying the planet. We're going to go extinct. Anyway, I'm going to get off here. I started this from the border of Ohio and Indiana. I just went through Indianapolis. Helps me spend the time a lot quicker. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope y'all came back. There's some people that watched the video and not the live stream. I'm sorry I couldn't read the chat because I'm busy driving. But look, if you see me in a live stream and you want to talk about it, I'll talk to you about it. No name calling, because that doesn't do anything. People don't know. People don't know. It's just that they weren't told. You know, that's why I say knowledge is power. Remember that. Knowledge is power. Because when I look upon it, my knowledge I had 10 years ago and I look at what I got now, I was a dumbass. And that's putting it lightly. But y'all have a good night. I'll probably end up in Missouri somewhere. Or maybe in the middle of Illinois. I may not even be able to get this load on time in Fort Worth. Might have to have them repower it. But you guys have a good day. And good night. Bye-bye.